So Alessio asks, how many email pitches of a single game can you send simultaneously? For a new designer, an answer can take months to arrive, and usually it's a no. So is it considered to be bad manners to send multiple pitches to multiple publishers? Absolutely not, Alessio. It's absolutely fine to pitch your game to as many publishers at the same time as you want. For the majority of publishers, in fact, they expect designers to do that, and it's really unfair for them to expect anything else, really. Because as you said, it might take them months to get an answer to you, and during that time, if you haven't shown it to other publishers, then you've effectively wasted your time with it being stuck with one publisher. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that at all. Send it to as many publishers as you want. The one thing I would say is if a particular publisher shows an interest in the game, then that's the point where you need to communicate that both to that publisher, that you've shown it to other publishers, and to the other publishers that you've shown it to, that a publisher is actually interested in the game. These days, what I like to do is if I've pitched a game to many different publishers at the same time and they're all considering it, and then I get an offer for a contract from one of those publishers, then I firstly reply to that first publisher saying, thanks very much for the offer. I'm just going to contact the other publishers who have this game and see what they think about the game before I give you a last answer about this contract. And then I email all the other publishers that are considering the game and tell them that I've received an offer from another publisher for the game, and then give them a deadline for the time that you want them to respond to you if they want to also give you a contract for the game. I'd set that deadline to be somewhere 2 to 4 weeks from the point of you emailing them. This way you're being open with all the publishers you're working with, you're respecting their time, and at the same time you're giving yourself the best opportunity to get the best offer from a publisher. It used to be that I'd always think that the first publisher that gave me a contract, that's the publisher I had to go with, that I had to kind of honor who had got there first. But this isn't the case anymore. Publishers work on quite long time frames. An extra 2 to 4 weeks to make a decision on signing a contract isn't going to make much of a difference at this point. And again, I think a lot of publishers would just expect you to wait and see what's the best deal that you might get. Albino Orc Albertson, amazing name, has asked, what are some projects you like to revisit? It's interesting, I'm not a designer that really likes going back to old designs and reworking them. There are some designers, like Uwe Rosenberg for instance, that will constantly tinker with similar mechanisms and make lots of new games which might be iterations of previous published ones. I like doing lots of different things. I think once I've made a particular style of game, I'm not that interested to go back and repurpose some of the mechanisms to make a different game. Although I've just realized you might be talking about some projects that were not published that I'd like to revisit. I've been obsessed with this idea that a lot of people think is terrible, which is a dueling game where each of the people who are dueling are represented by an author from history, people like Jane Austen or Dante, and that they're fighting each other by sort of conjuring the creations from their books. So Dante is like raining hellfire on you, and Jane Austen is killing you with politeness or awkward social conversation. I've never been able to get it to work, but I just love the absurdity of it, and the part of me that loves making special power card games, there could be some really interesting ways to make the characters feel different. For instance, I think about Franz Kafka, and he could be like conjuring crazy things from his mind that don't make any sense. You could have this huge intellect for the metamorphosis or things like this. The idea is probably terrible, but I keep coming back to it every now and then and think that I might do more of it. And there is actually one project that I need to go back and revisit. I made this dice dueling game where each player has a certain number of dice which they're rolling to make a spaceship, and once they build their spaceship, then the spaceships fight each other, and you play that over rounds and you're trying to destroy each other. I really like the game. I made it a long time ago. It was signed with a publisher, but then that publisher went out of business. I think I'll probably make a video about it at some point, but that's another idea that I'd like to come back to one day. It's just quite a hard sell. 2-player games are sometimes quite tough already, and this is a game that would need custom dice, so the cost is a bit higher as well. So maybe it's a little bit too niche, but I think it's a really good game. And Albino Orc Albertson also asked, can you turn off or at least turn down your designer brain when playing a game for recreation? The short answer is no. And actually, it ruins some games for me. One game in particular that I really strongly remember is The Mind. I think The Mind is an incredible design, and I've been able to appreciate it on an academic level. But it's really hard for me to really feel the strength of the game, to feel the joy and the surprise and the suspense that you get when you play the game. I've seen groups play it and get so into it and really enjoy it. But for me, I can't turn off the part of my brain that analyzes how the game actually works. And ultimately, I see those moments where you manage to just play the cards in order or just miss out. I just see that as random chance. So for those who don't know, in The Mind, players are dealt out numbered cards from 1 to 100. The cards are 1 to 100 in the deck, and each player has a subset of those cards. And you have to play them in order so that the lowest card is played and then the next lowest, and so on and so forth. Except you can't talk and you can't communicate about what's in your hand whatsoever. And so you're trying to watch each other, you're making small movements to indicate, oh, maybe I'll play my card because maybe this 3 in my hand is the lowest, or maybe you have a 15 on the table and you have a 30 in your hand. And you're like, does anyone have the numbers between 15 or 30, or am I the next one to play? You edge your card out slowly, cautiously, seeing if anyone else wants to play a card. Sometimes there'll be somebody else who'll also be doing the same thing because maybe they have a card that's a similar distance away from the 15. And then the best moments in that game are when you both make a final snap decision, and maybe I play my card first and it's a 30, and then you play your card as a 31, and you feel like, wow, we're amazing, we completely read each other's minds. But I just think it's pure chance. My designer brain says to me, when you have cards that are so similar to each other, they're one away from each other, and you have such a big gap, there was no way that you could behave differently to somehow intuit that I had the 30 and you had the 31. We would have behaved basically the same way if I had the 31 and you had the 30. I've never been able to fully get into the game because for me it just feels completely by chance. But if you're able to suspend that part of your brain, then it feels amazing, and that's the magic of the game. And as I mature as a game designer, it's that kind of magic. It's something that is so ethereal. It's something you can't tell from the rules of the game or even the logic of a game. It's just created in the play. That's the kind of thing I want to learn more about, because that's where you truly get great games. Because ultimately games are about how we spend time with each other, how we interact with each other. That's what creates memorable moments. It's usually not a particular mechanism or a particularly good strategic choice you've made. It's those fun, stupid, lucky moments. And it's something that I'm trying to get better at recognizing and being able to design games in that kind of way. It's hard for me to turn it off. I could probably turn it off mostly in games which I've played a lot and that I really enjoy. For example, Race of the Galaxy comes to mind as a game where I can get completely in the flow of just enjoying and playing the game. And that's a really wonderful experience. But mostly, yeah, I can't really turn it off. And Matthew asks, how do you deal with negative reviews or having your game overlooked after working sometimes years on a game? It's tough. I will say it gets easier, especially when you have more projects, because when you only have one game out and you get a negative review or a negative comment about it, it feels like your entire world is kind of crashing down because it's that one thing you've done and somebody doesn't like it. But over time, as you have more projects that go out in the world, not only do you get more used to the idea of getting negative feedback or positive feedback, more of that is happening, you have more experience of that. But also, maybe when one game isn't being received well or you read one bad comment, there are usually a bunch of other positive comments somewhere else that you can turn to kind of cheer yourself up. I don't know what it's called, but we have a bias for remembering negative things more than we do positive things. And that makes it harder to deal with these things because they stick in your head. For a couple of years now, I've tried to be better at saving positive comments that I get in a specific folder in my notes, which I've just called positives. I don't go back and read it very often, but the hope is that when I'm stuck in reacting to a negative comment like this, that I can try and get myself to go to that positives folder in my notes and read some of those, and that'll help kind of balance me out and help me remember, hey, people do like my games. It's not all negativity, to give myself some balance. One thing I particularly struggle with is when you get a negative review for a game or a negative comment, and that's based on the game being played wrong. Earlier on in my career, I was completely like, oh, this is terrible. They played their game wrong. Why did they do that? And then they give me this negative review. I still struggle with it. It's still frustrating now. But now I try to be a bit better that after I have that initial reaction to their negativity, I remember that it's not completely their fault if they've played the game wrong. We haven't communicated something in the rules or the way that we present the game and its components to accurately help them learn how to play the game. And that's a point of learning or improvement to do better in future projects, or potentially to put an FAQ on BoardGameGeek for that game, especially if multiple people have the same problem. And you also mentioned about having your game overlooked after working sometimes years on a game. Because I've got better at dealing with negative reviews, what I find harder now is when I think that I have had a really great idea and I've sort of managed to find the great publisher for it, and I think they've done an amazing job producing it. The game gets released, it has positive reviews, people like it, but it just kind of dies. It doesn't sell particularly well and nobody's talking about it, and then it just dies a quiet death without anybody noticing. I think that's the really hard thing. There are some games, as you say, that you work on it for many years, even 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you go through all of these things to finally release a game, and you think you've done a really good job, and then it just doesn't hit for some reason. And that happens. There are a lot of reasons why good games aren't noticed or don't sell well, and some of them are in your control, some of them are outside of your control. When you get to a certain point of career, you can recognize when an idea is kind of special, when a particular idea had the chance to do really well. It wasn't such a run-of-the-mill kind of game. It had a chance to really stand out from the rest. And when it doesn't do that, you feel it even more, because those ideas don't come along very often. I would really recommend working on multiple projects at any point in your career, actually. I think early on in your career, you're learning how to design games. Working on different projects helps you develop those skills. You're testing out different muscles. And also, you're giving yourself the best chance that one of them will be picked up by a publisher, because you're still learning that part of the process too. And later on, working on lots of different projects means that, yeah, if you have a disappointing experience, whether that's because the publisher didn't do a great job releasing the game, or it just didn't hit for some reason, at least it's not the only thing that you're pinning everything on, and you can turn to other projects to pick yourself up with.